My name is Samantha Cole, and 3 months ago, I thought I had everything. I was 25, engaged to the most popular guy in town, and planning what everyone called the wedding of the century. My fiancé, Brandon Wells, was the golden boy, star quarterback in high school, successful business owner, and the kind of guy who could charm anyone. Our wedding was set for June 15th at the beautiful Riverside Manor. I had chosen my best friend since childhood, Melissa Turner, as my maid of honor. Everything seemed perfect. Brandon's construction company was thriving, and we had just bought a gorgeous house on Oak Street. Everyone in our small town of Willowbrook envied us. I spent my days planning centerpieces, choosing flowers, and dreaming about our future. Brandon would come home every evening with that perfect smile, telling me about his day. We would sit on our porch, talking about our honeymoon plans and the life we would build together. Looking back now, I realize how blind I was to the cracks forming in my perfect world. If you like our revenge stories, please subscribe for more. We drop powerful news stories every week, filled with truth, emotion, and justice. Don't miss the next one. And remember, some stories hurt, but they heal too. Subscribe now, and join the journey. It started with small things that I brushed off as wedding stress. Brandon began working late more often, claiming big construction projects needed his attention. When I suggested bringing him dinner at the office, he quickly declined, saying it would distract the crew. Melissa also seemed different. She had always been bubbly and excited about the wedding plans, but lately, she avoided my calls and made excuses when I wanted to go dress shopping or taste cakes together. When we did meet, she seemed nervous and couldn't look me in the eye. "Are you okay?" I asked her one afternoon at the coffee shop downtown. We were supposed to finalize the bridesmaid dress colors, but she kept checking her phone. "I'm fine, Sam. Just work stuff," she mumbled, stirring her latte without drinking it. "You've been acting weird for weeks. Is something bothering you about the wedding?" She finally looked up, and for a moment, I saw guilt flash across her face. "No, everything's perfect. Your wedding will be beautiful." But something in her voice told me otherwise. 2 weeks before the wedding, I decided to surprise Brandon at his office. I had picked up his favorite sandwich from Murphy's Deli and thought we could have lunch together. His secretary, Mrs. Patterson, wasn't at her desk, so I walked straight to his office. The door was slightly open, and I could hear voices inside. I was about to knock when I heard a familiar laugh, Melissa's laugh. My heart stopped. "We can't keep doing this," I heard Brandon say. "The wedding is in 2 weeks." "I know," Melissa replied, her voice soft. "But I can't stop thinking about you. This is killing me, Brandon. She's my best friend. We'll figure it out after the honeymoon. Sam doesn't suspect anything." I stood frozen in the hallway, the sandwich bag trembling in my hands. My perfect world crumbled in that moment. The 2 people I trusted most in the world were betraying me, and they thought I was too stupid to notice. I backed away quietly, my heart pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it. If you like our revenge stories, please subscribe for more. We drop powerful news stories every week, filled with truth, emotion, and justice. Don't miss the next one. And remember, some stories hurt, but they heal too. Subscribe now, and join the journey. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to storm back into that office and confront them both. Another part wanted to call off the wedding immediately. But as I sat in my car outside our house, the house we had bought together, a different feeling took over. Anger. Cold, calculated anger. Brandon and Melissa thought they were so smart, sneaking around behind my back. They thought I was the naive little girl who would never figure it out. Well, they were wrong. I walked into the house and looked around at all the wedding gifts already arriving, the seating chart spread across the dining room table, the wedding dress hanging in the closet. 200 people were expecting the wedding of the century. They were going to get one. I pulled out my phone and started making a list. If Brandon and Melissa wanted to play games, I would play too. But I was going to win. First, I needed proof. Then, I needed the perfect moment to reveal their betrayal to everyone. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I had a job to do, and it wasn't going to be easy. I needed concrete evidence of Brandon and Melissa's affair, not just overheard conversations. I started with Brandon's laptop. He always left it open on the kitchen counter, never thinking I would snoop. My hands shook as I scrolled through his messages and emails. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Text messages between Brandon and Melissa going back 3 months. Photos they had sent each other. Plans to meet at the construction site after hours. My stomach turned as I read their messages, but I screenshot everything. The worst part was reading how they talked about me. Sam is so focused on the wedding, she doesn't notice anything, Brandon had written. Sometimes I feel bad, but she'll never know, Melissa had replied. I printed everything and stored it in a folder labeled Wedding Plans. How fitting. Next, I needed to catch them in the act. I knew they met at the construction site on Elm Street after hours. Tonight, I would be waiting. That evening, I parked across the street from Brandon's construction site and waited. At 7:30, Brandon's truck pulled up. 15 minutes later, Melissa's car arrived. My heart was beating so fast I thought it might explode, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had borrowed my neighbor's camera with the long-distance lens, claiming I wanted to practice photography. Through the camera lens, I watched them embrace in the doorway of the half-built office building. Then they disappeared inside. I waited, knowing they would eventually come out. An hour later, they emerged, looking around nervously before kissing goodbye. I took photo after photo, the camera clicking quietly in the darkness. Brandon got in his truck first. I slumped down as he drove past my hiding spot. Melissa followed 5 minutes later, just like they had planned it. When I got home, Brandon was already there, showering. How was work? I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. Long day, he called back. The Peterson project is behind schedule. Liar. I uploaded the photos to my computer and added them to my evidence folder. The final week before the wedding was torture. I had to pretend everything was normal while planning my revenge. Every time Brandon kissed me, I wanted to scream. Every time Melissa called to discuss wedding details, I wanted to tell her exactly what I thought of her. But I held my tongue. I had a plan, and it was going to be spectacular. I made one small change to our wedding ceremony. I told the minister, Father Williams, that I wanted to add a special surprise speech before we exchanged vows. Something personal and heartfelt to thank everyone for coming. That sounds lovely, Samantha, he said. What a wonderful way to start your marriage. If only he knew. I also made a few adjustments to the reception seating chart. I moved Melissa's parents closer to the head table and made sure my cousin Jake, who worked in tech, was seated near the projection screen we had rented for the slideshow. Everything was falling into place. In 3 days, everyone in Willowbrook would know the truth about Brandon Wells and Melissa Turner. The night before the wedding, we gathered at Riverside Manor for the rehearsal dinner. Brandon looked handsome in his navy suit, playing the perfect groom-to-be. Melissa wore a beautiful pink dress, smiling and laughing with the other bridesmaids. They were both such good actors. During the rehearsal, I watched them carefully. They barely looked at each other, maintaining the perfect illusion of appropriate distance. But I caught the small glances, the way Brandon's hand brushed against Melissa's when he passed her, the secret smile she gave him when she thought no one was looking. You seem nervous, my mother said, squeezing my hand during dinner. It's perfectly normal, sweetheart. Tomorrow will be the most beautiful day of your life. I squeezed back. I know, Mom. Everything is going to be perfect. Brandon gave a speech thanking everyone for coming and talking about how lucky he was to marry his best friend. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. I was ready to burn his perfect life to the ground, just like he had burned mine. I woke up on my wedding day feeling strangely calm. After weeks of planning and anger, I felt peaceful knowing that justice was finally coming. My bridesmaids arrived early to help me get ready. Melissa came with coffee and bagels, acting like the devoted best friend she had always pretended to be. "How are you feeling?" she asked, helping me into my wedding dress. "Perfect," I said, looking at myself in the mirror. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. The dress was beautiful, a flowing white gown with intricate beadwork that had cost more than my car. I had chosen it because Brandon said it made me look like a princess. How naive I had been. As Melissa zipped up the back, I felt her hands trembling slightly. Good. She should be nervous. My phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Jake. "Everything is set up. The files are loaded and ready to go." I smiled at my reflection. In 3 hours, the show would begin. My mother came in with tears in her eyes. "You look absolutely radiant, sweetheart." I did look radiant. Revenge was a beautiful look on me. The music began, and my bridesmaids started their procession down the aisle. Melissa went last, as the maid of honor, carrying her bouquet of white roses and looking appropriately solemn for the occasion. Through the bridal suite window, I could see the guests seated in perfect rows on the manor's lawn. 200 people, including both our families, all our friends, and half the town. The local newspaper photographer was there too, ready to capture what everyone thought would be a fairy tale wedding. My father appeared at my side, offering his arm. "Ready, princess?" "More than ready, Dad." The wedding march began, and we stepped outside. I saw Brandon waiting at the altar in his black tuxedo, his face lighting up when he saw me. For just a moment, I remembered why I had fallen in love with him. He really was handsome and charming. Too bad he was also a lying, cheating snake. I walked slowly down the aisle, smiling at friends and family. Everyone looked so happy, so excited to witness our perfect love story. They had no idea what was coming. Brandon took my hand when I reached the altar, whispering, "You're the most beautiful bride in the world." I squeezed his hand. "Thank you. This is going to be unforgettable." Father Williams welcomed everyone and began the ceremony with a prayer. I bowed my head respectfully, but inside, my heart was racing with anticipation. Before we begin the exchange of vows, Father Williams announced, "Samantha has asked to share some special words with everyone." I saw confusion flicker across Brandon's face. This wasn't part of the rehearsal. Melissa looked worried from her position beside me. "Thank you, Father Williams," I said, stepping forward to the microphone we had set up. I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone who has supported Brandon and me throughout our relationship. The crowd smiled warmly, expecting a sweet, heartfelt speech. "Marriage is about trust, honesty, and faithfulness," I continued. "It's about two people who choose each other above all others." Brandon relaxed slightly, thinking this was just a normal wedding speech. "Unfortunately," I said, my voice still sweet and calm, "I recently discovered that not everyone here today understands those values." Now Brandon looked confused. Melissa had gone pale. "Jake," I called to my cousin, "would you please start the slideshow?" The projection screen flickered to life behind me. The first image appeared, a text message conversation between Brandon and Melissa. Gasps echoed across the lawn as the first screenshot appeared on the giant screen. Brandon and Melissa's text messages were now visible to all 200 wedding guests. "What is this?" Brandon whispered, but his voice was picked up by the microphone. "This," I said calmly, "is the truth about my faithful fiancé and my loyal best friend." The next slide showed more messages, including the photos they had sent each other. Nothing inappropriate for the audience, but intimate enough to make their relationship clear. "Sam, stop this," Melissa pleaded from behind me. "Stop what?" I asked innocently. "Sharing the beautiful love story you two have been writing behind my back for 3 months?" The crowd was in chaos now. People were standing up, pointing at the screen, whispering frantically to each other. Brandon's mother had her hands over her mouth in shock. Melissa's parents looked mortified. The final slide was the photo I had taken of them kissing outside the construction site, dated just 5 days ago. "I want to thank Brandon and Melissa," I announced, "for teaching me what love really isn't." I handed the microphone back to Father Williams, who stood frozen in disbelief. "The wedding is cancelled," I declared. "But please, stay for the reception. The food is already paid for." The next few minutes were pure chaos. Brandon tried to grab my arm, but I stepped away from him. "Sam, let me explain," he started, but I cut him off. "Explain what?" "That you've been sleeping with my best friend for months? That you were planning to continue after our honeymoon?" "I heard everything, Brandon. I have screenshots of everything." Melissa was crying, her carefully applied makeup running down her face. "I'm sorry, Sam. I never meant for this to happen." "You never meant to get caught," I corrected. "There's a difference." Brandon's groomsmen looked shocked and embarrassed. Some guests were leaving, clearly uncomfortable with the drama. Others stayed, too fascinated by the spectacle to move. My parents rushed to my side. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" my mother asked. "I'm perfect, Mom. For the first time in months, everything is exactly as it should be." Brandon's father approached us, his face red with embarrassment. "Son, what have you done?" "Dad, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain," I interrupted. "Your son is a cheater, and everyone here now knows it." The newspaper photographer was still taking pictures, capturing every moment of Brandon's humiliation. Within an hour, photos and videos from the wedding were all over social media. Someone had recorded my speech and posted it online. The hashtag bridesmaid betrayal was trending locally. I had changed out of my wedding dress and into a simple blue sundress. I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The truth was finally out. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls and messages from friends and family. Many were supportive, others were shocked, and a few were asking for more details about what had happened. "Sam, you need to see this," my cousin Jake said, showing me his phone. The video of my wedding speech had over 10,000 views and was being shared across town. Comments were pouring in. "Good for her. She deserves better. Can't believe Brandon would do this. That bridesmaid is so fake. Best wedding speech ever." Brandon and Melissa had both left the manor quickly after my revelation, but the damage was done. Everyone in Willowbrook now knew what kind of people they really were. My mother found me sitting in the bridal suite, scrolling through the social media posts. "How long have you known?" she asked gently. 2 weeks. "I've been planning this since I found out." The next morning, I woke up in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house. I couldn't bear to go back to the house Brandon and I had shared, not yet. My phone had hundreds of new messages and missed calls. The local newspaper wanted an interview. The town's Facebook groups were buzzing with discussion about what everyone was calling the wedding scandal. I decided to go to Murphy's Deli for coffee, the same place where I had bought Brandon's sandwich the day I discovered his betrayal. I needed to face the town eventually. When I walked in, the entire deli went quiet for a moment. Then Mrs. Murphy, the owner, came around the counter and gave me a huge hug. "Honey, you are the bravest woman in this town," she said loudly. "What you did took incredible courage." Other customers started clapping. I felt tears in my eyes, but they were good tears for the first time in weeks. "That Brandon Wells always thought he was better than everyone," said Mr. Carson from the corner booth. "Now everyone knows what he really is." People kept coming up to me, offering support and sharing their own stories about Brandon's arrogant behavior over the years. By the third day after the wedding, Brandon's construction company was in serious trouble. 3 major clients had canceled their contracts, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. His business partners were furious about the negative publicity. I heard through the grapevine that he had tried to explain himself to several clients, but the damage was too severe. In a small town like Willowbrook, reputation was everything, and his was completely destroyed. The local bank had also started asking questions about the loan for our house, since both our names were on the mortgage, but I obviously wouldn't be living there anymore. Melissa had apparently taken a leave of absence from her job at the elementary school. Parents were talking, and the school district was concerned about the negative attention. Meanwhile, I had received several job offers from people who admired how I had handled the situation. The owner of the local marketing firm called me personally to offer me a position. "We need someone with your kind of strategic thinking," she said. "What you did took incredible planning and execution." I was starting to realize that my revenge had done more than just expose their betrayal. It had shown everyone, including myself, that I was stronger than I had ever imagined. A week after the wedding, I finally went back to the house to collect my belongings. Brandon wasn't there, which was probably for the best. I packed my clothes, books, and personal items, leaving behind everything we had bought together. As I was loading boxes into my car, my neighbor Mrs. Henderson came over. "I'm sorry about what happened, dear," she said. "But I have to tell you, I always suspected something was going on. I saw that girl's car here several times when you were at work." Even the neighbors had known. Brandon and Melissa hadn't been as sneaky as they thought. I found the folder with all the wedding plans we had made together and threw it in the trash. Those dreams belonged to a different Samantha, one who believed in fairy tales and perfect love. The new Samantha knew better. That evening, I accepted the job offer from the marketing firm. It was time to start building a new life, one based on my own strength rather than someone else's lies. My mother helped me move into a small apartment downtown. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and no one could take it away from me. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Brandon's lawyer. Apparently, he won. "You have a strong case," my attorney explained. "Since you can prove the adultery, you're entitled to keep everything you brought to the relationship, and he'll be responsible for the mortgage on the house." The legal process was complicated, but I felt confident. I had documentation of everything, and Brandon's reputation was so damaged that any judge would see through his attempts to play the victim. During our first mediation session, Brandon tried to apologize again. "Sam, I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this." "Mistakes?" I laughed. "You had a 3-month affair with my best friend. That's not a mistake, it's a choice." His lawyer quickly moved us back to discussing assets and debts. Melissa had been served with papers too, since some of their meetings had taken place in our shared house. Her parents were reportedly furious and had hired their own lawyer to minimize her involvement. By the end of the month, I had won almost everything. Brandon would keep the house but had to buy out my share, plus pay my legal fees. 3 months after the wedding that never was, I was thriving in my new job. The marketing firm had given me several high-profile clients, and my reputation as someone who got results was growing. Ironically, my wedding scandal had become my greatest professional asset. Business owners respected someone who could execute a plan flawlessly under pressure. "You turned a personal disaster into a public relations masterpiece," my boss, Caroline, told me during my performance review. "Most people would have just cried and called off the wedding. You made a statement." I was working on a campaign for the grand opening of a new restaurant when Caroline knocked on my office door. "There's someone here to see you," she said with a strange smile. I looked up to see a man in an expensive suit, probably in his early 30s, with kind eyes and a confident smile. "Ms. Cole? I'm Nathan Pierce. I own Pierce and Associates downtown. I've been following your work since your wedding." He handed me his business card. Pierce and Associates was the most prestigious consulting firm in the county. "I have a proposition for you." Nathan Pierce's offer was incredible. He wanted me to head up a new division focused on crisis management and reputation recovery. Ironically, he said with a smile, "Your experience with destroying someone's reputation makes you perfect for helping rebuild them." The salary was double what I was making, plus bonuses and equity in the company. It was the kind of opportunity one never would have imagined a year ago. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you understand how quickly everything can change. You know what it feels like to have your world fall apart, and you know how to fight back. Our clients need someone who's been through the fire." I accepted the position immediately. That weekend, I was moving into a beautiful new apartment across town when I ran into Melissa at the grocery store. She looked terrible, thin, tired, and nervous. "Sam," she said quietly. "I've been wanting to talk to you." "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, not stopping my shopping. "I know you hate me, and you have every right to. But I need you to know how sorry I am." I turned to face her. "Are you sorry you betrayed me, or sorry you got caught?" She started crying right there in the cereal aisle. Through the local gossip network, I learned that Melissa's life had completely unraveled. She had lost her job at the elementary school when parents complained about her being a bad influence on their children. Her engagement to her long-term boyfriend had also ended when he found out about the affair. She was apparently staying with her parents and working part-time at a store in the next town over, trying to avoid the constant whispers and stares in Willowbrook. Meanwhile, Brandon had been forced to sell the house at a loss when his construction business failed completely. He had moved to another state, supposedly to start over where people didn't know his story. I felt no satisfaction in their misery, just a sense of completion. They had made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. My new job was incredibly fulfilling. I was helping small business owners rebuild after scandals, guiding politicians through crisis management, and teaching companies how to handle negative publicity. One day, Caroline called me into her office. "Samantha, you've gotten so good at this that I think you should consider starting your own consulting firm. You have the skills and the reputation now." The idea was terrifying and exciting at the same time. 6 months later, I opened Cole Consulting, specializing in crisis management and reputation recovery. My first client was a family restaurant that had been wrongly accused of health code violations by a competitor. Within 2 weeks, I had not only cleared their name but exposed the competitor's lies, resulting in a huge boost to their business. Word spread quickly, and soon I had clients from 3 counties away. My wedding scandal story had become legendary, and people trusted me to handle their most sensitive situations. One evening, as I was working late in my new office, Nathan Pierce stopped by. "How does it feel to be the most sought-after consultant in the region?" he asked. "Surreal," I admitted. "A year ago, I thought my life was ending. Now I feel like it's just beginning." "You turned the worst day of your life into the foundation of your success," he said. "That takes incredible strength." Over dinner, Nathan told me about his own divorce several years earlier and how it had motivated him to build his business. "Sometimes," he said, "the people who hurt us the most end up giving us the greatest gifts. They force us to discover who we really are." A year after my non-wedding, I was featured on the cover of the regional business magazine as Entrepreneur of the Year. The article detailed how I had turned personal betrayal into professional triumph. My parents were so proud they bought 20 copies of the magazine. My mother had the cover framed and hung it in their living room. "I always knew you were destined for great things," she said, "but I never imagined it would happen like this." That same week, I received an unexpected email from Brandon. He was writing from Seattle, where he was working for someone else's construction company. "Sam, I know I have no right to contact you, but I saw the magazine article. I wanted you to know how proud I am of what you've accomplished. I also want you to know that I will regret what I did to you for the rest of my life. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I hope someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me, not for my sake, but for yours." I read the email twice, then deleted it without responding. Some bridges were meant to stay burned. That evening, Nathan and I had dinner at the same restaurant where Brandon and I had had our first date. Nathan and I had been dating for 3 months, taking things slowly and building a relationship based on mutual respect and complete honesty. He knew my whole story, and I knew his. "The difference between us and most couples," he said one evening as we walked along the river, "is that we both know how quickly everything can change. It makes us appreciate what we have." He was right. I would never again take love for granted or ignore red flags. I had learned to trust my instincts and value myself enough to demand the respect I deserved. My business was booming. I had hired 2 assistants and was considering opening a second office in the state capital. The girl who had once planned centerpieces and worried about bridesmaid dress colors now ran board meetings and negotiated million-dollar contracts. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I had never discovered Brandon's betrayal. Would I have married him and lived a lie? Would I have remained the naive girl who believed in fairy tales? I was grateful, in a strange way, that I had found out the truth. It had forced me to become the strong, independent woman I was meant to be. On the anniversary of my non-wedding, Nathan surprised me with a weekend trip to the mountains. As I sat on the cabin porch, watching the sunset over the mountains, I reflected on the past year. I had lost a fiancé and a best friend, but I had gained something far more valuable, myself. My phone buzzed with a text from a potential new client, a politician whose opponent had spread lies about his family. A year ago, I wouldn't have known how to help him. Now, I was exactly the person he needed. Any regrets? Nathan asked, joining me on the porch with 2 cups of coffee. Only one, I said. I regret not seeing the truth sooner. But if you had, you might have just broken up quietly and never discovered what you were capable of. He was right. My public revenge had been shocking, even cruel by some people's standards. But it had also been the catalyst for everything good that had come after. Brandon and Melissa had taught me that some people will betray you without a second thought. But I had taught them, and everyone else in Willowbrook, that actions have consequences. The perfect revenge wasn't just destroying their reputations. It was building something better from the ashes of their betrayal. As the stars came out, I smiled, thinking about tomorrow's challenges and opportunities. I was Samantha Cole, crisis management consultant, successful entrepreneur, and survivor. And I had never been happier. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what part hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching.